future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Afternoon, everyone. You have tuned in to Distill It, a 360-degree view of life in sports. My name is Wendy Rosenthal, and I am here with the ever-lovely Ira Schwitzer, my friend and partner in just about everything.
It's true.
Good to
Everything,
see you.
yeah.
Everything. Almost. Ira and I are the co-founders of a company called The Distillery, where we work with athletes to help them repurpose their athletic intelligence into a very fulfilling life after sports. Yeah. And because of that work, we and our passion for sports, we come to you every couple of weeks with a view of sports that is a little bit different than really what's going on the field or the courts or whatever venue, the pools, whatever it is. We like to take a look at everything that's going on around in sports because we believe sports is a metaphor for life. And if you look on the fields and you look around the business of sports, you see pretty much what happens in everyday life. And we like to talk about that. So thank you for joining us.
And allowing us a space.
And allowing us a space to talk. And we are here with our lovely, wonderful engineer, Ryan. Welcome.
Hi, my fault. How are you guys doing this week?
Fabulous.
Fantastic. Thank you, as always, for being here and for your input. We appreciate it.
Go Dodgers.
Normally, I would be telling you.
That's good.
Well, we're going to talk about that very quickly.
If Gia's listening, she's very happy now.
Yes, she is.
Got one more fan.
Yes, she is. Normally, I'd be telling you the call-in number right now, but the reason I am not going to is because at the last minute, we had a last-minute shift in what we were going to do today. We were going to have a freestyle talk about all things that are going on in our minds about sports, hot topics. But some of you may know that we had the pleasure of going to the UK last week to cover the Seattle Seahawks Oakland Raiders game. Yeah. And one of the things that we were able to do was to have a very enlightening interview with a BBC sportscaster named Tony Husband. And we just got the footage in. And we really want to share this interview because it was...
He's so funny and articulate and just...
And so British.
And so British.
So British.
Yeah, really fun to listen to him. And I think he's got such great insight.
Yeah.
And post some really fun questions.
And he's
thinking.
Yeah, he's an American football fan.
Yeah.
So we wanted to share the interview that we did. We did it alongside the league ambassadors, the group that we were over there with for the game, and they also had some good questions.
Exactly. But we do want your feedback, so please enjoy the interview, and then as always, shoot us an email or
comment. We're going to be watching alongside you on our Facebook page. So if you have any comments or questions that we can pick up at the end of the show, we will do so. Yep. Before we get started, though, we can't not talk about a few things.
But all those extra, all those people running around all of a sudden with the blue hats on their heads, all of a sudden Dodgers fans.
I've worn my hat on the show before, so I am a proud Dodger fan, whether they're winning or losing.
Exactly.
But how about those Dodgers?
Amazing. How about how it started early on?
Yeah.
How about the entire season?
Let's talk about the entire season real fast. And
because I think it's great inspiration if we can just keep the Lakers focused and not get down on themselves about what's happening right now. Just take a look at the Dodgers and how things started off early on and how things evolved throughout the season and look at where they are now.
Well, again,
World Series tonight.
This is why we love sports and why we say it's a metaphor for life, right? So the Dodgers start out the season horribly. Yeah. They go the first third of the season, they're 10 games back or so, and everybody is criticizing them for their lackluster play.
Sure.
What's wrong with the team? How could they be so high last season and then just crash this season? And and now here they are, as you said, going to be in the World Series in about 2 hours and exactly 2 hours because it's about 3:07 or something that they start. And it just shows, what does it take for a team to make such a huge turnaround? I mean, they're going up against a Boston team that had 108 wins, and we've only had 91, 92, 93, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's it. That's that mindset. I'm telling you, that sports mindset is just, it's what you do. It's just all you know how to do is to play your game. So win or lose, you get up and you give it a shot again the next day. You just keep going. What's the alternative? There isn't one.
Well, no, there is. I'm sorry, there is one. You could be down on yourself. You could listen to what the press is saying. You could be beating yourself up because you're not contributing.
Right,
like there's
but
a lot that you could
do. In terms of your job, this is what you do.
Right.
You're not going to, you don't quit your day job now because it's, you're getting the criticism from the media, and you're getting all of the criticism from your fans. This is what you do. So you get up and just keep doing it.
I think this proves a point. The whole mindset of the Dodgers as a team, and I think individually, they've all stepped up. Different players, weren't even either around or playing well last year, and all of a sudden they're having like banner years.
Sure.
I think that for me, it's very inspiring, and why I love working with athletes is that athletes really do have that ability to understand the dynamics of their sport, that you're not going to win every game.
Right.
You're not going to make every basket. You are not going to make every touchdown or make every complete pass. Yeah. You are, in more times than not, you're in failure in a way. If you look at, let's stick with baseball, we always talk about how,
batting averages.
Yeah, you're batting 300, you're only actually hitting 3 times out of every 7 that you go up, or every 10 that you go up to bat.
Right.
And athletes just have that mentality where they can turn that switch on and go, okay, now what? So let's keep going.
Right.
It doesn't happen to many of us.
Not as easy.
Not as easy.
No, not at all.
You're more of an athlete competitively than I ever will be or ever was. So tell me.
How do you know? How do you know ever will be? Anything is possible. Who knows how you might wake up tomorrow?
I love sports for different reasons. In terms
you don't
of
particularly need to actively engage. Exactly.
No, I do like to actively engage in sports, but I don't need to do it for competitive. I'm competitive in many other areas of my life.
Oh, I know that.
So
everyone who knows you can attest to that.
Yeah. So I don't need, but you are. So I'm asking you honestly, like, why is that something that an athlete either develops or has to have naturally?
I think it is something that is so innately ingrained in who you are that there isn't really an alternative. It's when I talk about, you don't get up and walk away from it. It's not just because it doesn't make sense to you in your head. It's not because you don't hear the noise. It really is because it's something that's so ingrained within you. It is a part of who you are. This is just what you, for whatever reason, know how to do, want to do, need to do. Make everything around you possible so that you can do this. This is just a part of who you are. You don't know what it's like to not have that. So there is no other alternative. It is just who you are.
It's just who you are. So
right.
it becomes part of your DNA.
Right.
Which is why we tell our clients at the end of the day, just fall back on who you are and what you know.
Right.
So we have a comment from a friend of ours, Leah Gillis. Thank you very much. Hope you're enjoying France. And I will say Go Sox on air only because you put it in the comment and everybody's going to see it anyway. But with love, absolutely no flipping way.
You lost your mind, woman.
You lost your mind. Ryan, do you have a California driver's license? No.
But is LA your home?
It is indeed my home, but I do not have. I'm new. I'm still.
Okay.
I'm
but
adjusting.
So is this contagious? Are you a Dodgers fan now? Are you riding the high?
I'm rooting for him for sure.
Fabulous.
I'm a Colorado kid, so I kind of have my Rockies, but we don't have a lot to celebrate. But
right.
But yeah, I'm up. I'm absolutely on.
So now
I'm
Dodgers bandwagon.
Yeah,
awesome.
I wouldn't say a bandwagon, but I'm supporting my city that
Nice.
I am
So
now
if I asked
currently
you,
a part of.
if I asked you as a friend of ours did, she gave me a picture of a couple of players and said, "These are the players I'm meant to meditate on. That they do really well during the series." If I gave you pictures, would you be willing to meditate or no?
Pick one to pray for. Focus all your energies on just this one.
I put it out into the ether for a whole fun game, and fun to enjoy and all that stuff.
You want a fun series.
I haven't gotten that deep into the Dodgers fandom yet.
Right, but if you had to choose between one or the other, you're living in LA, so you may as well root for the Dodgers. Okay, fair enough. Right. Fair enough. You may continue on as engineer of our show.
Will do.
And maybe the lucky Dodger hat will help us. At least win. We have to at least win one game in Boston. Right. So let's hope it's tonight. It would be nice to start.
It'd be awesome to start off that way.
Be amazing.
Yeah.
The only other quick note is very interesting fact that I read, and I'm sure this is obvious, but to everybody except for me, that the majority of pitchers for the entire series on both teams are lefties.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Most of the starters are lefties.
What are the odds of that?
What are the odds?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
insane.
very. In fact, tonight both of them are lefties. So it's and neither team does well against lefties. So what is it could be like?
So what does that say?
Could be a
Kind of
very
see what
boring
we're in
series.
store
You know,
for, right?
No, let's see lots of home
We want
runs
good
out of the
action.
park,
Yeah.
hits, moving men around base, and all for the Dodgers. Okay, let us now introduce more formally Tony Husband. He is a very, loved sportscaster in the UK, in the southern part, just kind of an hour south of London.
Yeah.
He is truly a lovely man. He's been doing this for a long time, and I kind of would equate him to the equivalent of a Fred Rogan or a Jim Hill here in Los Angeles, for those of you who know who those people are in Los Angeles. But, local sports reporter who covers the local teams.
Sure.
Primarily, of course, I'll say it properly, football teams in that region.
Yeah.
And he was lovely enough to take the time to speak with us because we wanted a perspective of a peer.
Right.
He's a peer in the UK, and we wanted to hear what he thinks about not only football but American sports in general.
Right.
And he happens to be a very big sports fan. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and play the interview. And like I said, we're going to keep an eye on things here in studio. So if you have any comments, we'll be able to pick it up at the end.
Yep.
We really appreciate those of you who are tuning in. I also see some friends of mine up from the UK. So hopefully you'll appreciate what Tony has to say.
Thank you.
Let's roll it. Hi, Distill It fans. This is Wendy Rosenthal, and I am very fortunate to be in Southampton with my good friend Kevin from the League Ambassadors. And we are here today because we are interviewing a sports presenter for the BBC. He's going to tell us a lot about himself in just a minute, to talk about his love of the NFL, American football, and sports in general. Tony, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Tony
Great
Husband
to talk
from
to you.
the BBC. Tell us a little bit about yourself for our American fans that may not know who you are.
Well, I suppose if I was to try and kind of make people have an idea what I do, what I do is I'm like a sportscaster for the nightly news. So, like you have in your local stations in the US, the nightly news will have a sports guy.
You're the sports guy.
I'm the sports guy, I suppose, and I cover all the sports in this area, and then I do other work for other parts of the BBC, because the BBC is such a kind of big beast of an organisation. So I will cover soccer and things like that for the BBC nationally. But essentially, a lot of the audience who see me locally I will be the guy telling them about the big local sports teams in this region of the UK.
Which is the southern region. Right?
Yes, yeah. So our big teams would be like Premier League soccer.
Yeah.
So we have Southampton, Brighton, teams like that, and Bournemouth as well, who are doing very well.
Yeah,
these
they
days.
are.
Yeah. So and that's really interesting actually, because obviously the Premier League is on this big worldwide journey. And they are a massive brand, and one of the big areas they want to grow into is the US market.
Just a quick note on that before you ask your first question. It's so interesting that as a soccer fan, I have to say it that way for all of our friends back in the United States,
Sure.
that when you go to soccer games nowadays, half the team actually are people from the Premiership. And funny, our team, you're in the East Coast, but in LA, the LA Galaxy has, I think, three players at least.
Yeah.
Ashley Cole's playing for the LA Galaxy.
Indeed.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Wayne Rooney is in Washington now with DC.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, if you scratch the surface, but if you drill down into MLS, the amount of English, Scottish, Irish, both players and coaches who are now earning a living in MLS, it's a large number. It's very interesting. I went to MLS headquarters in New York a few years ago, and to see how that league is growing. They still get the players kind of near the end of their careers in the beginning, and I suppose they will try and bring that average age down a little bit, so that maybe they're not always getting them nearer the end. But it's encouraging. Atlanta is incredible.
Yeah.
The expansion there. So,
I know.
you know, that looks like it's going to grow.
We'll have to talk about that in another interview.
Yes.
With you, actually.
Well, you did speak about growth, and obviously the NFL is trying to grow here in the UK. How does covering the NFL differ from the Premier League, whether it's your personal experience or coverage as a whole?
Well, they're very different in as far as how they're covered over here. You know, the NFL is a big, growing, popular sport in this country. But what I'd say it still is a minority sport to the mass audience. We wander out into Southampton on a morning, and you won't find too many people who would say they're big NFL fans, but they may have an awareness of it. And maybe the big challenge that the sport faces in the next few years is how does something that's got a very good core audience, a big cult following, that sells out Wembley Stadium every time, every year, every game, but how does it maybe start to get into the mainstream a bit, so that when I come in and I pick up the big national newspapers of the day in my office, and I'm looking at the soccer stories, the cricket stories, the rugby stories, you won't see much in the mainstream about the NFL. So it is reported in specialty,
right.
So, you know, special sites. NFL UK will be a place that a lot of UK fans would go to, and a lot of UK fans will read all the NFL sites from America, you know, the MMQB, Sports Illustrated, all those kind of places.
What do you think it's going to take to get the NFL to that position here in the UK? Because I think a little bit from a perception outside, it's grown quite a bit. I mean, from the first game maybe 11 years ago, where it was one game, and it's sold out now to 3 games annually, and they're all selling out. That's quite a bit of growth. What do you think it'll be the thing that'll turn it over? I
think the only thing that can turn it over would be to put a team here. I think that's the only way we will change what is it's a popular sport for a minority of people. You know, there's a massive audience. So it's a sport that's very popular amongst the kind of millennial audience. It's a sport that's so social media friendly. It's so friendly. You know, if I compare how I can access my NFL information now with how when I was a 7-year-old kid back in the 1980s who started watching it on our 4th TV channel in the UK, and the games were shown a week after they were played, but it didn't matter because we had no idea what had happened in them. We had no real way of finding out. But now the information is all at your fingertips. It's all there. But how are we going to kind of it's about making the people who aren't interested. And I think that's the case with a lot of sports in some ways. And I've changed my view on this. My view was always, I don't know about an actual franchise in London or the UK or even Europe, because we all have our teams, we all love the league, we've grown up with it in a way, and will we change? Will we suddenly become London fans? But now my view, I think, is having seen how they just consistently sell Wembley out, I think the only way we're going to take it any further is for London to have a team and a bigger investment in the league.
Well, logistically though, like how would that work?
It's going to be challenging, isn't it? And it's difficult because the other thing is, if you put a London team in the league, it needs to be good. Because you can't put a team here that's going to do a Cleveland Browns for 3 years. It could be, and I think that is the biggest concern I would imagine that the NFL would have is, you know, once you do it, what's your get out policy if you have to get out of it without it being a big public relations
fiasco?
And
how do you find an owner? Do you think you need a local owner here, or can it be an American owner that brings a team over?
I think the general wisdom is that we already have our owner in Mr. Khan.
Yeah.
Maybe. There's a big thing going on in the UK at the moment, which is actually the venue for the NFL games this year, Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
You know, famous Wembley Stadium. Shahid Khan owns Fulham Football Club in the Premier League, and he is trying to buy Wembley Stadium. And that is a big story in this country because it's seen as the kind of spiritual home of English football. In fact, actually, the Football Federation, the Football Association of England, they actually haven't owned it for that long in historical terms. He wants to pay £600 million to buy it, but it's a divisive issue. But I think if he buys it, I think we could see he will be, if whether it's the Jags in themselves, but I think he will have a big involvement in it. I don't see why he would buy Wembley. You know, sure, he's a businessman and it would make money for concerts and whatever, but I'm not sure he would do it unless he had a bigger plan.
A stake in it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to focus a little bit more in regards to just your approach as far as the game goes. So even though there isn't as much scoring in soccer, there's football.
Yeah.
There's action for the entire 90 minutes, whereas in
Yeah.
the NFL, game could last over 3 hours, but there's only like 11 minutes of actual game time. So does that change the way that you cover the game, just the way that football here is played?
Well, they are so different, the sports. They are so different, and everything about them is different, from the match day experience to the presentation to the reporting. It's totally different, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
And you know, soccer. Our soccer is, you know, people are used to that kind of constant, high pressure, high intensity kind of game. The reporting of it is very instant. Well, the reporting of it is probably but it's people's instant reactions, and we still get that with the NFL. There is so much written about soccer in this country. You know, follow-up articles for days after games. But I suppose it's difficult to say. The two sports are so different that the reporting styles will be different. But I guess some of the general principles remain the same. You know, you're condensing the information of the match and reporting what happened. And in fact, when we've done, I can remember when we used to do radio shows with the NFL Sunday nights, you know, you'd wrap up a game in much the same way you would wrap up an English soccer game. You'd say, you know, instead of somebody got a hat trick, you'd say Graham Gano kicked 3 field goals and Cam Newton threw 2 touchdowns in a 24-7 win for the Panthers or something. So the actual reporting style, I think you fall back into your journalistic principles. It's pretty much the same, but the sports are poles apart in the cultural way that they fit. You know.
Now, you said that you were a fan of football since you were a kid.
Yeah.
What, for you, sitting so far away from like where it's actually taking place, like what captured your imagination? What got you to like engage with a sport that you had to literally fight to see?
Yeah. Well, do you know what? It just, you're a little child, and so I'll keep the story fairly brief, but so we had 3 TV channels in the UK in the 1980s. So I was, you know, very young child around that time. And then the 4th channel launched, and the 4th channel's remit was to have some different stuff, bring different audiences and different sports. And they started showing American football, and my dad turned it on a Sunday night. And I literally was, you know, got ready for school on Monday, and I would just sit on his knee and watch, and he was watching it. He was curious.
Do you remember who was playing?
Oh, not in that very first time but the reason why I'm a Raiders fan is because...
Oh, wait. He's a Raiders fan.
I'm a Raiders fan. I am a Raiders fan.
Like, there's a little bit of about that.
Yeah.
We're going to get
to
that.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Well, that first year that I had any kind of awareness of the NFL, and was the year the Raiders beat the Redskins in Super Bowl 18. Marcus Allen.
Went to USC. Sorry.
Well, and I just loved that thing about the silver and black of them, but we'll talk about that later. But from there I decided, you know what, rather than just watching the end of it with my dad before I go to bed on a Sunday night for school, the next year I'll maybe watch it from the start. And then I just got into it. And there's something about, you know, if you like the way Americans present sport, and it's so different from the way it's traditionally done in the UK. If you love the kind of presentation, the razzmatazz, you love the strategy, the tactics, the raw emotion, the power, but the skill, then it draws you in. I mean, but it doesn't draw everybody in.
No.
From our traditional sporting viewpoint. Going back to that soccer point, you know, soccer is a fast sport. Some people over here just cannot get the stop-start nature of American football. But, you know, I just was hooked into it.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because you also cover baseball too, right?
I have covered baseball, Major League Baseball on BBC Radio.
Yeah, and it's a sport that, like you said, is a change of pace, but people relate to it in a different way. How do you see baseball, Major League Baseball as a whole? Like, it's one of those sports, at least in America, where it's hard for a younger generation to connect, because it doesn't celebrate the personalities of their league the way that National Football League or NBA, National Basketball Association, does. It's almost like everyone is kept at like this level. Like, how does that How do you feel?
I mean, baseball really is way off the radar of British sports fans, and I think that is again a testament to basically the popularity of the NFL, that the power the NFL obviously has in America, but also the power that it's had to be able to grab that land space of Western Europe where the NFL is so popular. Because actually, if you think about it, baseball ought to have been quite popular in this country. It kind of started here back in the 16th century.
But so did football, by the way.
Yeah, well,
with rugby.
Absolutely. So, you know, and we have cricket.
Which, by the way, I'm sorry, is way more boring.
Can we do a whole new podcast on cricket?
We can. You know
tried,
what?
actually.
I would love to, because the 2020s are fun.
Yeah, well, now that is you are saying exactly what a lot of fans in this country think. But cricket is so similar to baseball in that it can be very slow, but sometimes it can be absolutely enthralling. But sometimes it can be the worst sport in the world, and I say that as a cricket lover. Yeah. You know. And I think baseball, it's maybe they play too many games in baseball. Is that difficult to kind of for people to connect? You know, they play baseball day after day after day. I went to baseball in San Francisco once and sat there and watched. It was the most beautiful experience, lovely evening. And a few of the people sitting around me, it was like they were getting together just to have a chat. They left before the end of the match, and the match still we didn't know who was going to win. I thought, but the game hasn't finished, and they just left. But they'd come and chatted for 2 hours and then left. And I couldn't honestly tell you anything special that happened in the game, but I had a really nice night sitting by the bay. You know,
well, that's a beautiful stadium.
Absolutely. So I just think it's a tough one with baseball, isn't it? I think the NBA and the NFL have got in here.
Yeah.
And I know baseball's bringing the Yankees. I mean, a sign of how baseball needs to ramp it up is I think they're bringing the Yankees and the Red Sox here. So rather than the NFL has been a little bit more cautious. You know, the matchups have not always been A-list.
Yeah.
A sign, I think, of how MLB need to catch up is that they are going to bring, I'm pretty sure it's Red Sox and Yankees to play
since the
3 games.
The Red Sox just killed the Yankees in the championship, the division.
Divisional round. What interested me, I heard the other day on I listened to Andrew Brandt a lot on Ross Tucker's podcast, and it was amazing that the TV audience for the blowout of New Orleans against the Redskins on Monday night was way bigger than was it the Red Sox that were playing at the same time?
Yeah. But you know, it's
in a playoff game.
Yeah, but you know, it's so interesting about that because I think it aligns a little bit with here as well. Like the Red Sox and the Yankees, they're such home teams. Like, honest to goodness,
right.
I wouldn't watch that game. And I love baseball. You know, like I might if it were the World Series or if it was maybe the championship series, but the divisional level. Yeah. No, it's not so.
Yeah, I mean, me being from Baltimore, I hate both the Yankees and the Red Sox.
So you're not going to watch it anyway.
I think the attraction to that game, the Saints and the Skins game, was because Drew Brees was going for the passing record.
Yeah.
But the NFL does a great job of marketing those milestones and getting people to tune in.
Yeah. Well, it kept me watching because it was obvious the game wasn't much of a game.
No, it was a blowout. And after he broke the record, I know I turned it off.
Yeah,
I was done.
But as an insight into how a UK fan watches a game, you see, I was watching that game on Wednesday afternoon in my living room, you know, nearly 2 days after it was played, because obviously the primetime games are, you know, that's the big challenge for an NFL UK fan, is that the primetime games are all going on when we're asleep. Well, most of us are asleep.
So, interestingly, this season so far, we've had 2 games that have ended in a tie in the NFL, which is not a usual thing. But it happens quite often in soccer and in other sports in the UK. So, and it made me think about the perception of fans. So the difference between American fans and British fans. Can you say a little bit of something? Because like I still can't believe that we have 2 games that end in a tie, and it really pisses me off. Excuse my language, but it really upsets me because like, what's the point?
Do you know what? I think this is so fascinating. I'm so glad we can talk about this, because that is where there is a really big sporting cultural divide between the US and Europe, because we are the land of the draw. You know, we'll play cricket matches for 5 days
and have a draw.
No result. You know,
I don't know how you live with that.
I will go to a third or maybe half the soccer matches I may cover in a league in the season. They could be draws, and you walk away at the end of the day and say it was a draw. And the thing with the ties in the NFL is like, I think over here people are like, it's a tie. Well, you take a tie. It's not a defeat.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Colts coach was. lambasted, wasn't he? Because he screwed up the play in overtime and they lost the game. Yeah. And he said, "We don't play for ties." And now, to a European fan, you're like, "What?
What? Are you nuts?
Are you mad? You risk losing the game when you have a tie in the bag? Okay, we all like to win. Fair enough, I understand that. But you would sacrifice the risk of defeat over a tie. Over here, that's totally different. We value a draw. We don't mind a tie."
And it's funny.
If you're a Raiders fan, I'd take a tie now.
Yeah,
that's the same thing for Browns fans. They got to tie this shit. And a lot of them were like, "Hey, at least we didn't lose."
Yeah.
So for some teams, the expectations are a little bit lower. They'll take a tie, but for the most part in America, we need to see somebody win or lose. There's no cut cards, no way in between.
Yeah, and do you think having more NFL games here, or even having a team here, would change the Brits' perception of draws? Like, do you think, win at all costs would kind of permeate into other sport? No, everybody's going to be...
We just don't do the sudden death thing very well, because the only times we experience it are when we play in soccer World Cups, and we generally lose.
Right.
We hate them. And again, if you're of a certain age, you've grown up with the England soccer team losing virtually every sudden death occasion that they've been in, and it's total agony. We hate it. So I think it'll be a long time before the concept of the draw would lose popularity.
Well, speaking of popularity, are there any individual NFL players who you think have like a cult following here, or that are like truly beloved here, like over others? Or has it not happened yet?
Yeah. If you go back through the ages of the sport having any resonance in the UK, I mean, probably one of the first big, and the reason why there's a big Miami fan base in the UK is Dan Marino. So if we take it back, to those kind of days, Dan Marino, Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, that kind of era, and then the Chicago Bears team, the Refrigerator Perry, is probably still, to a lot of people in this country, they would say, American football, didn't they have that guy, the Fridge? And now that's not speaking for the modern day, up-to-date fan base, of which, there's a growing army. But if you was going back to that kind of the uninterested, it's names like the Refrigerator that would still resonate even today. And if you
he
bring
wasn't even that good of a player.
Well, no, but
I mean, he was good, but he wasn't that good.
But I think the.
Do you remember him? You're a little young.
I do. No, I remember that, and the commercial that they had. It was the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yeah.
That was the
that's it. Yeah.
Omar's gonna make you do that now.
Yeah.
We're gonna get. Our friend Omar is a Bears fan. He's a part of the league ambassador. He's gonna love to hear that though.
Yeah. No, I mean that Bears team, again, of its generation, played a very, very significant part in the first wave of NFL fans, of which I would say I probably am kind of just about hanging on to, but obviously there were a lot of older fans got into it at that time as well, who are now much older, but they are a pivotal moment really in the NFL's European journey. But then, if you bring it forward to today, we now, I think, because of the access we have to being able to watch the content, we are sitting. I sit at my desk we have 6 people on our desk when they're all in, and there's 3 of us who are NFL nuts, and then there's 3 who don't really know anything about it, and we sit there on a Monday and we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, how unbelievable that was. I'm usually talking about how bad it was for the Raiders. We have a Bears fan who is delighted about Khalil Mack. And we're now talking about, wow, what is this guy Mahomes doing in Kansas City? So I think we're all now sharing the same heroes, and it's, whereas before they needed to kind of market somebody like a Refrigerator or a Dan Marino or Joe Montana, bring them over and present him to the UK and say, look, this guy's popular. Now I think we're soaking up those stars, but that's one thing with the NBA. I think have probably still cornered that. I mean, the NBA is not really a very watched sport in the UK by any mass amount of people, but the era of Shaq and Michael Jordan, they made it to be the biggest.
It's a very player-driven league, if now more than anything because of free agency. It's like people, at least in my generation, are more so fans of individual players than they are of teams.
Yeah. Not my day though.
It was all about you. It was all about your team.
Yeah. But the one guy I suppose who is now becoming a name that people talk about and I don't know whether NFL fans talk about him as much, but he's certainly become a name synonymous with American sport, is Colin Kaepernick. So, you know, and that is something that has made it into the mainstream in this country, you know, the debate over all of that.
Funny you should bring it up.
Yeah, we were actually talking about it on the way here, and it's interesting to get your take. How, for being away, you know, outside of America, of course, from the whole situation, how does that resonate here? And do you think that something like that can happen where, like, a player takes that kind of stand and you have an issue with a political leader like Donald Trump who speaks up about it? Like, how do you guys see that from, you know,
well, we live in such interesting political times, don't we?
Here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very difficult one. I can't think. I'm sure there will be colleagues who would correct me and say, well, there is some kind of parallel. I can't think of a situation in recent times that we've had quite something like this to tackle in English sport. I think over here there is a far more probably respectful view towards Kaepernick, and a far more sympathetic hearing to him from this side of the pond, because I think people over here will be, I'm certainly not saying, you know, in the US people are anti-protest, but I think over here people would say, you know, absolutely right that he has the right to protest. Also, I think people are maybe, you know, you don't hear the whole story over here as well, because I sometimes caution people when they maybe go too far one way with it and say, well, you know, you need to maybe know the context of everything, whether it's about Colin Kaepernick himself and also just about the whole situation. I mean, I was in the States a month ago, and we had a fascinating chat with a couple of ladies from Ohio. We talked about the issue of the flag and the anthem, and you know, they were just so passionate about how you know, protest all you like, do not disrespect the flag. They were so strong on that, and that is something that, you know, we don't have quite that same association over here with our flag. And you know, and even if somebody did make some kind of protest, I'm trying to think what the equivalent would be here. It would maybe be at the FA Cup final, refusing to sing because we only play the national anthem before a couple of big games. I'd love to know what would happen if we started playing the national anthem before every Premier League game. Well, we have such a multicultural,
it wouldn't fly the same way.
Highly popular. You know, there's so many different nations playing. You know, most of them would not know the anthem or be singing the anthem anyway, because we have so many players from abroad. So it's a really interesting debate, but I would say, to summarise it, there is I think probably a more sympathetic view towards Kaepernick in this side of the world than maybe some sections in America. It's a difficult subject, isn't it?
Yeah, I wish more Americans were sympathetic towards it. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It does start with having proper context and knowing why someone like him and other players like Eric Reed, who supported him, why they would take a stance like that. Like, what went wrong in our country for them to have to do something like that? Absolutely,
and you know, we over here, you know, a lot of people probably are not completely clear with it, although they hear and they obviously see certain key events that, you know, have helped lead to the kind of Kaepernick era of protest. But it seems to have, the noise around it seems to have gone down, but the issue hasn't really gone away, has it? I don't think, looking at it from here.
I think it's a really interesting point that you brought up, and I don't know, like the fact that many teams across sports here in the UK have so many players that come from all over the world. You were saying, like, you don't know if there was something that would instigate something like what Colin had to do in the US because of that. I find that really fascinating, actually, if you think about the fact that the teams here are so multinational. Like, what would anybody rally against?
Yeah, and what one cause could they rally behind?
What one cause they could rally against?
And I mean, we do have situations in soccer where, I mean, we had a very interesting one where the England soccer team wanted to commemorate it's a centenary of the First World War. So so we've had 2014 to 2018, we've had a very highly significant centenary every year of stages of the First World War, where obviously, you know, so many millions of people died and so many soldiers left and died. And the England soccer team wanted to wear a poppy, which is our show every year of respect and remembering, and it's our own gesture towards remembering in whichever way, you know, whether you're, you know, people who are anti-war would potentially wear a poppy just because it's just remembering the fallen, whatever your political view. and the world governing body of football, soccer, ban any kind of political representation or message on their shirts. And this led to a big standoff, because actually it was one of those few occasions where it did upset a lot of people, because they said, this is not a political message. All this is saying we are remembering those who fell.
Anywhere, anytime.
Indeed, in conflict, whatever your view of that conflict might be. And it did cause a huge row, and I think the England team just went ahead and did it anyway, because they just said, well, we just don't agree. So we've had that's on a national basis, but yeah, if you had some kind of big issue in the Premier League, it would be hard to find something that would unite all the many different nationalities.
Exactly.
We have such a wonderful breadth of players who come from all over the world and make the Premier League, certainly marketing wise, the best league there is. Whether the quality of the football is the best, who knows, but it's such a diverse league. But yeah, if you got to try and unite the players around one thing would be quite hard. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you've obviously been in the business for a while. You've come across all types of personalities. As someone who does sideline interviews, and you spoke about content, are you familiar with Aaron Andrews' interview with Richard Sherman when he was with the Seahawks?
Yes, so absolutely.
I wanted to know that in a situation like that, just for context, she went over to him after a really hotly contested win, and he kind of just went off the rails, ignored her question, and had to say his own thing. Has something like that ever happened to you? And if so, what would be your approach? Do you just let the person you're interviewing just kind of take it if they got something to get off the chest, or do you kind of try to rail them in for the sake of the interview itself?
Well, it can be. I do those kind of interviews. I do those after Premier League games quite often. So you can find yourself with somebody who they come in and they are hot. They are still absolutely, and they're usually unhappy with something. Only last season, Joe Hart, who was the England goalkeeper, he came into an interview room, and there is sometimes an element of we all just kind of go through the motions with these things, because we know that they're quite restricted, that they're rights holding interviews, and you do your 3 or 4 questions, and quite often you'll find you'll get a little tap on the back and say, come on, wind it up, because the next rights holder needs to go. So sometimes you're kind of just doing it, and you don't maybe are thinking about it as much. But then Joe Hart comes in, and he was playing for West Ham at the time, and they had just thrown away a game with the last kick of the game, and he came in, and we just got into stuff. What do you think of the game and all that? And then very quickly he was just absolutely shocked, and I almost thought he was going to cry, because he was getting quite emotional about how his team had thrown it away. How have we thrown that away? And you suddenly find yourself, the room goes very quiet, but there's all these other people in the room, and you're thinking, right, I've got to get the next question. Where do we go? Where do we go from here? And I can't even remember what the next question was, but I mean, those are powerful. You get those kind of powerful moments. I had one. There's a very famous English football manager called Harry Redknapp.
Oh, I love Harry Redknapp.
Now, if you go on YouTube and just Google Harry Redknapp hit by ball, or Harry Redknapp football, or something like that, you'll find there's a YouTube video out there. So, and this was from right back, quite early in my career, where I went to interview him, and it was at the training ground, and we were doing an interview, and while he's doing the interview, this ball flies into the shot and kind of hits him on the back. The way the story got told later on was the ball hits him on the back of the head. It doesn't. It just hit him on the back of the legs. So anyway, we're recording this interview, and he turns around furious, and he's shouting at who did that? Who did that? He starts to swear, and he's like, you're shooting at the goal and you're hitting me here, and all this kind of stuff. And my cameraman kept recording while all this was going on, and then he calms down, and then we go, okay to continue. Okay. So anyway, picking up Harry from where we were, big game against Wolves, and you can still see he's absolutely right. He's there. He's like, and he went, yeah, it is a big game. It is a big game. And he went, and then I'll paraphrase it. He said, "No wonder he's in the flipping reserves." This went it's actually one of the first. How
did you not crack up?
Well, we kind of, because he was so angry, we were kind of right.
Right.
Did we just keep going?
Yeah.
So anyway, this went. Somebody. It wasn't us, and it was an example of how the internet has changed the world. Because this was sent up a line to another BBC office, and then somebody in the very early days of getting video content online, somebody thought it'd be quite funny to put it into an email. So they emailed it to a colleague and said, "Hey, look at this, Harry Redknapp's gone crazy." And then their colleague went, "Yeah, this is great." Send it on to somebody else. Before you know it, somebody sent it on to a whole department. Before you know that, it's going outside the organisation, it's going everywhere. But a few days later, it was on page 3 of the Daily Mirror newspaper,
hysterical.
Frame by frame. And I mean, it was one of my biggest experiences of a viral moment, but also kind of a difficult moment interviewing somebody, I suppose, as well.
And just to wrap it up, you say you're a Raiders fan.
Yes.
Sunday.
We gotta explore this.
Well.
Why the Raiders?
Well, it's that 1984 kind of. It's that silver and black mystique. It's that bad. I don't know what it was because I wasn't a bad boy.
Is it your inner bad boy?
Yeah, just the inner bad boy. I wasn't a misbehaved, unruly child. I was good. But I love that thing about the Raiders.
They brought something out of you.
Yeah, and I think the kit is the best kit in the league, whether they play in silver and white, if they're away, or the silver and black. I love the black hole kind of thing. So for me, it's been a funny one for me though, because actually when I first supported them, they were the Los Angeles Raiders, and then. The next season, one year they came back and it was Oakland, and I had to kind of go, what happened there? But then I'd read on my history, and so I realised that that's the kind of original team anyway. So now Vegas.
Moved to Vegas, yeah.
I'll carry on, but I feel for the people of Oakland. It's probably easier for Raiders fans, Raider Nation, and I think it may be easier for me to go and see them in Vegas than probably go and see them in Oakland.
Yeah, direct flights. Virgin.
Yeah.
No plug, but
yeah. I've done it. It's a good flight.
Yeah, I know.
But so mixed feelings. I hope they don't lose the passion of the fan base. And although I can't say the home form has been that great over the last few years anyway. So are they leaving a fortress? I don't know. But and the stadium, I think in Oakland, they need to upgrade.
It's rubbish.
So. It's the Vegas Raiders. Well, I stay a Raider.
Well, what do you think of them this year? And of course, before we leave, we got to get a prediction for Sunday.
Yeah. Well.
And I just want to add one more question. John Gruden, happy he's back or not so sure?
Well, kind of happy, and I feel a bit sorry for how it all I don't know how it all went so poor. I think it was the poor choice of offensive coordinator maybe last season, because I think they went 12-4 2 years ago, and then they suddenly just went all the wrong way last year. Gruden, well, I must say I really enjoyed him as a Monday Night Football commentator, analyst. I thought he was excellent. Is the game the same now as the game that he last coached in? I think that will be the worry now. But I suppose it's the long game. Is he going to do 10 years? But it looks like he wants to do. He might need 10 years at the moment to get this right. But I think. He's a Raider man. I mean, I do love that about him. He loves the Raiders. I've got faith in him as far as that goes. But it's been a tough start, and the Mac trade kind of is baffling.
It hurts to see him play that well in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Defensive player of the year so far.
Yeah. I mean, and that really was an indication that this clearly is a long ball game. But please don't make it too long.
For Sunday, you think you guys got a chance?
Well, I do know. I don't think it'll be a blowout. Like the last time the Raiders were here was an embarrassment, and Dennis Allen was fired off the back of one of the worst and most embarrassing displays anybody's put in, and to do that at Wembley was just awful. I think it'll be. I think it'll be a Seahawks win, because I think the Raiders are just so off at the moment, and they've got so much further to go. I other think just one interesting thing will be the weather's not great. The turf at Wembley does cut up a lot. Ground and pound. Both teams, I think, are quite run heavy this season. Look, Seattle, from what I gather, from reading what the experts say, are saying are moving more towards run style offense as well. And Wembley isn't great for that. It'll cut up. The turf will tear. So maybe Marshall will just tear it up completely. And maybe we can spring a surprise. I wouldn't be totally surprised if we could sneak a win, maybe a 16-13, but I think I'm being ambitious.
He's coming for revenge against his former team. So guys like that.
My journalistic storylines romantic mind is thinking, can we sneak a special win? My head is probably saying 28-7.
Tony Husband, thank you so much for joining Distill It and the League Ambassadors. It's been such a pleasure, and I'm going to take you up on some other discussions down the road.
Hey,
all
great.
of us will.
I hope we can do this, and maybe we'll do this in your hometown sometime.
Come visit, or we'll zoom you in. We'll zoom you in.
I would love
LA's
to
a
come
lot
in.
sunnier.
Yeah.
Right now, as we go into an English winter,
come visit us.
Very much look forward to that. It's so great
Anytime.
to welcome you here as well.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, first, before we say anything, both of us want to thank Tony Husband for taking the time. Wasn't he delightful?
And for offering to come on our show in the future, because I think we're going to have such a blast with him in studio. He is so smart and so witty and so funny.
I agree.
So insightful. Really excited to be able to hear.
I told him we wanted to talk about cricket. What do you think? You think our fans would like to hear about cricket?
I don't know that I want to sit and talk to him about cricket. Let alone our fans. We'll give it a shot. We'll see.
We'll see. Yes.
He can make it exciting.
Yes, I think he can. I think he can. And yes, so we will definitely have him on board.
So great.
Hopefully before the end of this year, in the next couple of months. So, anything you want to add? Any highlights from that you wanted to?
I'm still picturing him as taking on the Raiders. You know what I mean? Just loving the silver and the black and just it's his whole description of why.
Yeah.
How.
Yeah.
If that came to be. So
I love the fact that he loves the kit, but he doesn't wear any of it.
Right.
I love the fact that he remembers the fridge.
He remembers the fridge.
And then he thinks that the whole of the UK
remembers
the fridge.
We're like, that's
the fridge. I mean, you've got Joe Montana, you've got Dan Marino,
that's all it
Troy
takes.
Aikman.
That's how careers or personas get resurrected. You know what I mean? Like all the fridge needed was something like this. I mean, now all of a sudden it's
maybe we should send it to his PR people and see. Did you know you're big in the UK? You could go over there right now, probably do a tour, and make a lot of money out of it.
That's so great. Thanks to Tony Husband.
Yeah, exactly. No, I thought it was a fantastic interview. He was just so much fun to talk to, and what great insight that he has, especially being a fan.
Yeah, truly. Very well done.
All right, well.
We're back in 2 weeks.
We're back in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who were watching, we saw you and we appreciate every time that you do. And for those of you who are listening to this show on one of the podcast services, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, we appreciate it. We will be back in 2 weeks' time, so November 6th.
November 6th, I believe it is. And as always, we really do want to hear from you. If you have any ideas for topics, for show topics in the future, comments, suggestions, please, by all means, let us know. Shoot us an email.
Exactly. You can find us at thedistilleryinc.com. And Ryan, thanks as always for your support. Oh, we did have a little bit of an issue on our distillery page on Facebook. So if you want to see this whole thing replayed again, we will be uploading it shortly. Have a wonderful couple of weeks. Go Dodgers! Woo-hoo!
Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UEN Radio.